a record of a mortal's journey to immortality. Immortal Realm Chapter 96, Setup. Chapter 196, Setup. Han Li descended ever deeper beneath the mountain, and with each step downward the air grew hotter while the stone passage broadened steadily. By now the cavern's ceiling soared more than 100 feet overhead, vast and oppressive. He followed closely behind the Essence Fire Raven, his gaze sweeping across the cave walls as he moved. The stone surfaces were unnaturally smooth and even, bearing unmistakable traces of repeated repairs. It was likely the handiwork of the former elder who once occupied this mountain, Han Li mused. Given the overwhelming abundance of fire attribute spiritual energy here, that elder must have cultivated fire-aligned arts. If so, the illusory restriction outside was almost certainly his doing. After another quarter hour of flight, a deep, muffled roar filled the air, growing louder by the breath like endless thunder rolling through the earth. At this point, the Essence Fire Raven abruptly doubled its speed, darting forward with excitement. Han Li immediately followed suit. Moments later, an awe-inspiring sight unfolded before him. A colossal underground cavern stretched tens of thousands of feet in every direction, dyed entirely in blazing crimson. From the ceiling hung countless scarlet stalactites, each wrapped in flickering flames. Below lay a vast lake of molten magma, above which drifted a dense cloud of fiery red vapor. The magma churned endlessly, great bubbles swelling and bursting with thunderous booms. From each eruption emerged clusters of fist-sized crimson orbs that scattered throughout the cavern. Fire essence. Han Li's eyes shone as realization struck. The entire space was saturated with searing red radiance, the very air aflame. The heat was so intense that even with his profound immortal body, Han Li felt his throat dry and his skin prickle. Scorching winds surged from the magma lake, stinging like blades, yet the Essence Fire Raven reveled in this inferno. It wheeled through the cavern as a streak of silver, greedily devouring the drifting fire essence. At times, it plunged directly into the magma, vanishing only to burst forth elsewhere moments later, exuding pure delight. The underground fire vein here far exceeded Han Li's expectations. No wonder the former elder had gone to such lengths to conceal it. This place alone would allow the Essence Fire Raven to rapidly recover its former peak strength, but something was still lacking. With a flick of his sleeve, Han Li released hundreds of crimson flashes. Each contained a fiery array flag, which suspended themselves above the magma lake, arranging into a massive formation. He began chanting softly, seals flashing from his hands. The array activated, each flag emitting beams of red light that merged into a vast blazing array. Sensing his intent, the Essence Fire Raven ceased its play and flew directly to the array's center. Instantly, the fire energy of the entire cavern surged inward. Layer upon layer of flames coiled around the Raven, forming an enormous fiery cocoon. Han Li shot upward, appearing beside a cavern wall in a blink. A massive crimson brush appeared in his hand, and with swift strokes he inscribed immense runes, shaping them into a flaming sigil. He flashed to another section of the wall and repeated the process. Before long, 8 blazing flame designs encircled the cocoon from all sides. Only then did Han Li stow the brush and resume chanting. The 8 sigils flared simultaneously, linking together into a second great array that enveloped the cocoon. The 2 arrays resonated, and the cavern trembled faintly as even more firepower poured inward. Han Li could clearly sense the Essence Fire Raven's aura steadily rising, moment by moment. A trace of satisfaction appeared in his eyes. After circling the cavern to ensure both arrays were stable, he retraced his path and emerged back onto the mountain's surface. With a brief glance around, he released countless streaks of light into the surrounding valley, erecting a vast protective array that sealed the area once more. With the Essence Fire Raven settled, Han Li's spirits were high. Rather than returning immediately to the summit of Crimson Dawn Peak, he chose to survey his domain. From this day on, everything within a radius of 300,000 feet belonged to him. Preparations were in order. Nearly half a day passed as Han Li explored the territory, installing sensory arrays to warn him of intruders. Crimson Dawn Peak stood at the heart of it all, where spirit veins converged and worldly origin energy was richest. Beyond the peak, he discovered 2 moderately sized spirit regions, by Northern Glacial Immortal Region standards, along with over a dozen ore veins. The ore veins were mostly depleted, while the spirit regions had been divided into farmlands long since abandoned. Another true immortal might have dispatched servants to manage these resources for steady income, but Hanli had no such interest. For now, he soon returned to the summit. Meng Yungui and the others awaited him at the courtyard entrance, bowing deeply in unison. The summit had been thoroughly cleaned. Pavilions gleamed, bridges looked renewed, and golden fish darted through clear streams beneath emerald lotus leaves. Hanli nodded in approval, assigned living quarters to his subordinates, and dismissed them to rest. He then inspected the cave abode, setting up restrictions before heading to the spirit medicine field outside. This field was not suitable for precious herbs, yet leaving it empty would draw suspicion. After brief consideration, Hanli divided it into sections and planted ordinary spirit medicine seeds. With practiced ease, he completed the task swiftly. Producing a jade flagon, he released azure spirit liquid that rained gently over the field. A sweep of his sleeve unleashed azure light, and tiny green sprouts quickly emerged. A faint smile crossed his face as he turned and entered the cave abode. Plain on the outside, the interior contained over a dozen chambers, including pill and tool refinement rooms, sparing him much effort. He preferred this secluded interior far more than the open courtyard. After a moment's thought, Hanli modified the most hidden chamber into a small medicine garden. He then carved out another chamber near the mountain face, punching countless tiny holes to allow starlight and moonlight to filter in for the heaven-controlling vial. Only after completing these arrangements did he emerge again, intending to add more restrictions. Suddenly, his expression froze as his gaze fell upon the spirit medicine field. Most of the newly sprouted seedlings had already withered, leaving only a few standing. Frowning, Hanli rushed over and pulled one free. Its root was blackened and shriveled, as though scorched. The same held true for others, yet several plants were thriving without issue. Releasing his spiritual sense, Hanli quickly uncovered the cause. Years of unchecked underground fire veins had saturated the surrounding soil with intense fire attribute spiritual power. This environment nurtured fire-aligned plants, but was fatal to all others. The surviving seedlings were all fire attribute. Hanli's brows knit slightly. At last, the earlier reactions of Yu Xiansheng and Qi Liang made sense. Still, this was no insurmountable obstacle. He could simply erect separation arrays to shield the soil from further influence. Though this would weaken spirit qi absorption, it mattered little. His herbs relied primarily on the heaven-controlling vial. As for the courtyard field, it served only as a decoy. Planting fire attribute herbs there would suffice. Having reached this conclusion, Hanli set the matter aside and returned calmly to his preparations. A record of a mortal's journey to immortality, Immortal Realm Chapter 197. Chapter 197, Mantra Axis Scripture. Within a shadowed hall, eerie green flames swayed like ghostly lanterns, casting their light upon countless dark azure chains strewn across the floor. The chains shimmered faintly, exuding a cold, oppressive aura that clung to the air itself. At the heart of the hall sat a corpse-like man upon a black chair, his body leaning slightly forward. His face was swallowed by the overlapping shadows of flame and darkness, leaving his expression utterly unreadable. At that moment, the massive stone doors groaned open from without, their movement accompanied by a deep, muffled roar. Turbulent winds laden with sand poured inward, the thunderous churn echoing through the chamber. A towering figure nearly 10 feet tall stood framed in the doorway. He possessed a square, stern face and sallow yellow skin, with an ancient copper headguard crowning his head. A dark yellow robe draped his body like a cloak, its folds thick with sand freshly torn from the raging storm outside. As he entered, the stone doors slammed shut once more, sealing away the chaos beyond. His heavy footsteps rang out, stirring the dark azure chains into clattering motion as he advanced. Reaching the black chair, he dropped to one knee and spoke solemnly. "Master, I have gone to the site where Fang Pan perished." "Did you uncover anything?" the seated man asked, his voice hoarse and rasping as he leaned back slightly. "Nothing," the kneeling man replied grimly. His killer erased every trace with extreme care. "Fang Pan's death likely ties back to a formidable foe he hunted 300 years ago," the corpse-like man said coldly. Investigate this matter further. Yes, master. That night, the summit courtyard of Crimson Dawn Peak blazed with lamplight. Through the efforts of Meng Yongui and the others, the once ruined grounds were restored to livable condition. Deep within his cave abode, Han Li sat cross-legged inside a secluded chamber, clad in the intersect elder robes of the Blaze Dragon Dao. Before him lay a palm-sized circular metal plate, bearing the first level of the formless True Axis arts. After a long while, his eyes snapped open. He reached out, drawing the Spirit Note badge into his grasp, and pressed it firmly to his glabella. A brief flash erupted, and dense golden characters surged into his mind. The scripture divided neatly into two parts, an introduction followed by the first level of cultivation. It explained that the formless True Axis scripture comprised 3 stages, and full mastery granted a divine ability known as the mantra Treasured Axis. When invoked in battle, this ability slowed all attacks entering its domain, stripping foes of their speed. From the first to the 3rd level, the nature of the power remained unchanged. Only its might deepened. The first level halved an enemy's speed. The second reduced it by 90%. The 3rd level was left undescribed. Its potential hinted to be even more terrifying. The revelation shook Han Li to his core. Even having an opponent's speed was a heaven-defying advantage. Had he possessed such mastery during his clash with Fang Pan, the battle would never have been so arduous. Suppressing his excitement, he turned to the cultivation text itself, only for his brows to knot tightly. Though fluent in Golden Seal script, the phrasing and structure were utterly alien. Compared to the Golden Jade Tome, the language felt distorted and obscure, making comprehension painfully slow. After countless hours, he had deciphered less than 1%, and even that fragment remained unclear. Though disheartened, Han Li persevered, recalling the Golden Jade Tome as he painstakingly compared and pondered each line. At dawn, he withdrew the badge, exhaustion weighing heavily upon him. Rubbing his glabella, he sighed in frustration. The scripture's depth far exceeded his expectations. After an entire night, true understanding still eluded him. As he stowed the badge away and rose, a thought struck him. Elder Fang's words upon his departure from the Merit Conveyance Palace echoed in his mind. It seemed his intuition had not erred. With a wry smile, Han Li departed in a streak of azure light. Morning sunlight bathed Imperial Dragon Peak, gilding the Merit Conveyance Palace in warm brilliance. Han Li descended upon the White Jade Plaza, his elder robes glowing softly, lending him an almost immortal air. Entering the palace, he found it as quiet as before. Fang Zhuan sat behind the table, absorbed in the same ancient azure-covered text, a purple clay teacup of fragrant green tea at his side. Fang Zhuan set the book aside and smiled. "Welcome back, elderly." "You already know why I've returned," Han Li said with a clasped fist salute. "Indeed, all who exchange for the formless True Axis scripture return within 7 days. You are among the swiftest," Fang Zhuan replied calmly. At Han Li's question, Fang Zhuan explained that without its annotation scripture, the cultivation art was nearly impossible to comprehend. Many returned either to exchange it away or to seek guidance. Han Li could only smile bitterly. Fang Zhuan admitted he no longer warned newcomers. Experience itself was the best teacher. For 10 merit points, Han Li obtained the annotation scripture. After brief conversation, he returned to Crimson Dawn Peak and immersed himself in study. Only after half a day, aided by generations of annotations, did clarity emerge. The art's true name was the Mantra Axis Scripture, its original form so profound that 90% of cultivators failed at the initial hurdle alone. None within the Blaze Dragon Dao were known to have reached the 3rd level. Some, facing bottlenecks, forged mantra treasured axes from law-infused materials instead, engraving runes to unleash alternate powers. Though these axes scarcely slowed attacks, they manifested diverse abilities shaped by the laws within. Sharpness from metal, swiftness from speed. Thus the art became formless, unbound by fixed shape or path. Han Li sank into contemplation, then continued reading in silence, his thoughts flowing like a hidden current beneath calm waters. A record of a mortal's journey to immortality. Immortal Realm, Chapter 198. Chapter 198. Extraordinary luck. Several days slipped by like drifting clouds. In the eastern reaches of the Blaze, Dragon Dao lay a secluded valley, buried beneath eternal snow and long shunned due to its nearness to the snowmelt forest. Towering cedar trees rose more than 1,000 feet high, and whenever snow descended, their branches were cloaked in white, resembling rows of pristine, snowy pagodas when seen from afar. At this time, thunder roared ceaselessly within the valley. The cracking of trunks and splintering of branches echoed again and again, and the violent sound waves shook loose the snow piled upon the slopes. Vast sheets of snow poured downward, converging into a furious avalanche that surged through the valley. Only after spilling beyond its mouth did the torrent slowly subside, leaving countless wisps of fine snow drifting through the air. Just then an azure streak fell from the sky, landing at the valley's edge. The light dispersed to reveal Han Li, clad in the robes of an intersect elder. Another thunderclap sounded, and he gazed deep into the valley, where a towering pillar of silver lightning shot straight into the heavens. "So I truly came to the right place," he murmured. With a flip of his hand, a high-zenith invisibility talisman appeared. Purple light rippled around him, and his form faded until he vanished without a trace. Within the valley, countless cedars lay snapped and broken, their remains scattered across the snow. On a raised stone cliff at the valley's deepest point stood a thin, dark-skinned youth with eyes shining brightly. It was Ye Feng, who had clashed with Han Li at the beast-rearing fields days earlier. Silver lightning surged wildly over his body as he cultivated a formidable lightning art. Within several thousand feet, trees and bare stone alike were scorched black, white smoke curling upward. Feeling his lightning power grow ever stronger, Ye Feng burst into triumphant laughter. Yet the sound had barely left his lips when his body stiffened, and all lightning vanished in an instant. Space rippled before him, and Han Li appeared soundlessly, 2 fingers pressing against Ye Feng's glabella. Blue radiance glimmered in Han Li's eyes as a soul search was initiated. Back at the beast-rearing fields, Han Li had already planted a soul mark within Ye Feng. These days, Han Li had been immersed in studying the formless True Axis scripture, while Ye Feng stayed within his cave abode. Only now, as Ye Feng tested his newfound lightning might, did Han Li seize the chance. As the soul search continued, Han Li's expression shifted, from caution to surprise and finally to a helpless smile. The blue light faded, and he withdrew his fingers. "You truly possess extraordinary luck. Since you had no hand in what happened to me 300 years ago, I'll spare you. Still, it's time you returned what belongs to me." With that, he removed the storage bracelet from Ye Feng's wrist, inspected it briefly, and put it away. Then, transforming once more into azure light, he vanished into the distance. Only after his departure did Ye Feng slowly regain awareness. His jaw ached from hanging open, and his eyes were filled with confusion, as though all memory had been erased. Panic soon seized him when he noticed his bare wrist. He scrambled about, frantically searching his body and sweeping the area with his spiritual sense. Moments later, a heart-rending cry echoed through the valley. Han Li returned directly to his cave abode and entered the secret chamber. Along the way, Meng Chunchen greeted him with a joyful curtsy, yet he passed by without noticing, leaving her crestfallen. Seating himself within the chamber, Han Li refined the storage bracelet and produced an egg-sized golden sphere. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, but through his bright sight spirit eyes, Han Li saw countless faint, intricate patterns interwoven into mysterious images. Moreover, the sphere emitted an aura deeply familiar to him. Blue light flickered in his eyes as a strand of spiritual sense entered the sphere. The golden ball trembled, its patterns flaring to life and flooding the chamber with radiant gold. Cracks split its surface, mechanical segments unfolding as thin metal limbs emerged. In moments, it transformed into a palm-sized golden crab. "Fellow Taoist Shay," Han Li called urgently. There was no immediate reply. Then, a feeble yet familiar voice sounded within his mind. "Fellow Taoist Han, you finally found me." Emotion stirred in Han Li's chest. Suppressing it, he asked what had transpired 300 years ago. Taoist Shi paused, then slowly recounted the past. Long before Fang Pan's ambush, Han Li had faced another terrifying foe whose power far surpassed his own. Early in that battle, Taoist Shay and the 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were sealed with ease. Han Li barely escaped, grievously injured, while Mo Guang and the gold-devouring beetle monarch fought desperately to delay the enemy. To break the seal, Taoist Xie had self-detonated its puppet body, leaving only the core to flee alongside the swords. When its power was exhausted, the swords flew away on their own, and Taoist Xie fell unconscious. Han Li explained what followed. The core had been found and sold near the Blaze Dragon Dao as common refinement material. An inner sect disciple of mediocre talent stumbled upon its hidden patterns, deriving a lightning art that propelled him to prominence. By chance, Han Li noticed irregularities in that lightning technique, which ultimately led him here. Taoist Xi fell silent, then spoke again. When asked about the mysterious enemy, it clutched its head in pain. After a long pause, it could only recall a vague outline: immortal spiritual power far beyond Han Li's, and an inkstone immortal treasure that commanded shadows. Han Li sighed. He and Mo Guang also remembered nothing of the past 3 centuries. The situation was dire. He surmised that the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords might lie within the Bell Toll Mountain range, and vowed to refine a new body for Taoist Xie, even if it could not match the former one. Taoist Xi expressed its gratitude and reminded him of their old agreement from the spirit realm. Han Li nodded solemnly, promising to fulfill it once he attained sufficient power. With no more words exchanged, Taoist Xi reverted to a golden sphere and was carefully stowed away by Han Li. A record of a mortal's journey to immortality, Immortal Realm, Chapter 199. Chapter 199, Big Dipper Heavenly Star Plate. After placing the golden sphere away, Han Li fell into silent contemplation, his gaze steady yet distant. One by one, he reviewed all the clues and knowledge he had gathered so far, yet no thread could be traced back to the shadowy hand manipulating events from behind the scenes. After a long while, he released a soft breath and shook his head. That hidden foe had once forced him into a desperate corner. Such strength alone proved that Han Li, in his current state, was utterly unqualified to confront them. Until his cultivation rose further, avoidance was the wisest path. Even Fang Pan had been able to locate him. How much easier would it be for the true mastermind, should they learn he had returned to the Immortal Realm? His sole comfort lay in the possibility that his reappearance remained undiscovered. Regardless, power was the only answer. He needed to grow stronger, and quickly, to face the unpredictable dangers ahead. With that thought, Han Li summoned the twin starshift plate with a flick of his wrist. The vast distance between the Blaze Dragon Dao and the Black Wind Sea had weakened the connection between the paired plates to the brink. Heavy water could no longer be transferred, stalling both his earthly deity avatar's production and his supply of materials for refining heavy water veined lightning. Both matters were crucial and could not be neglected. This problem had plagued him since arriving on the ancient cloud continent, and now, with a foothold in the Blaze Dragon Dao, he finally had the chance to resolve it. He donned a plain outer robe to conceal his elder attire, then placed the Transient Guild mask upon his face. The twin starshift plates had been purchased from the Transient Guild. Naturally, the solution would be found there. In the spirit realm, such long-distance transfer would have been unthinkable, but in the Immortal Realm, where the laws themselves could be bent, such feats no longer seemed impossible. A curtain of azure light spread before him, lines of text and intricate diagrams flowing across its surface. Han Li entered the item exchange section and searched carefully. Soon, he found what he sought and selected it, waiting in silence. An hour later, the light rippled, condensing into the projection of a man clad in an azure-feathered robe, his face hidden behind a tiger mask. After a brief glance, the man spoke. "Ah, I recall you. You purchased a set of twin starshift plates from me before. Have they served you well?" "They suffice," Han Li replied evenly. "Have you encountered difficulties?" the tiger-masked man asked. "Their function is as described," Han Li said coolly, "but you failed to mention their distance limit." The man chuckled apologetically. "My oversight. They function reliably within roughly 1 continent. Beyond that, their teleportation ability weakens severely or fails outright." Han Li frowned slightly. "That's acceptable. I contacted you to ask whether this range can be increased." Though displeased, Han Li knew the deal was already done. There was no point dwelling on blame. "Not directly," the man replied. "However, there are superior alternatives. These plates were replicas of an immortal treasure, only 1 to 2% as effective, My friend has since refined a version reaching nearly 1/10 of the original's power, the Big Dipper Heavenly Star Plates. Are you interested, fellow Taoist? Hanli nodded. What price? 6,000 top-grade spirit stones. Hanli's expression chilled. Outrageous. That is over 10 times the original price. They are worth every stone, the man said calmly. After a moment's silence, Hanli replied, I cannot gather that sum immediately. Given our past dealings, can there be a concession? After extended bargaining, the price was reduced to 5,300 spirit stones. No further. I'll need 7 days, Hanli said at last. Very well, the man replied, vanishing as the light faded. Removing his mask, Hanli pondered briefly before inspecting his storage bracelet. Its contents were neatly sorted. Materials, herbs, ores, stones, pills, treasures, and scriptures. Most had been seized from Fangpan, as Hanli had sold nearly everything before leaving the Blackwind Sea. He currently possessed only around 3,200 top-grade spirit stones, far short of the required amount. Selling Fangpan's belongings was risky elsewhere, but the transient guild posed no such concern. Thanks to Sun Kei's guidance during their journey, Hanli had identified most of the unfamiliar items. Fangpan's wealth was considerable. Selling it all would more than cover the cost. As he prepared the items for sale, Hanli paused, retrieving 2 special boxes. One jade box held a massive white egg, still alive within its nourishing chi. The other contained 3 arrow-like azure feathers, faintly glowing and steeped in mystery. Even Sun Kei had failed to identify them. Hanli decided to post appraisal missions for both. 7 days later, within his secluded chamber, Hanli summoned the light screen once more and contacted the tiger-masked man. Have you gathered the spirit stones? The man asked. Hanli produced a storage pouch. 5,300. Do you have the plates? The transaction was swift. In exchange for the stones, Hanli received the Big Dipper Heavenly Star Plates. Brilliant blue, radiant like flowing water, their surfaces etched with profound formations. 7 white points formed the Big Dipper constellation, while 8 darker, more powerful starshift stones were embedded within each plate. Satisfaction flickered across Hanli's face, soon replaced by a faint frown. The distance to the Black Wind Sea remained vast. How was he to send one plate to his avatar? Sensing his hesitation, the tiger-masked man spoke. Is something amiss? Hanli hesitated, then asked, Is there truly no way to extend the twin starshift plate's range even once? Understanding dawned on the man. There is. Replace its starshift stones with second-grade ones and force activation. The range will multiply, but the plate will be destroyed after a single use. And these second-grade stones? The ones embedded in the Big Dipper Heavenly Star Plates. Hanli nodded calmly. Sacrificing the twin starshift plate was a small price to pay. He purchased additional second-grade starshift stones, keeping extras as insurance. With the path now clear, Hanli prepared to reconnect his divided power across the Immortal Realm. A record of a mortal's journey to immortality. Immortal Realm Chapter 200. Chapter 200. Emergence of the Treasured Axis. After parting ways with the tiger-masked man, Hanli released an appraisal task for the giant egg and azure feathers through the transient guild, then calmly removed the mask from his face. Once the disguise was stowed away, he produced his twin starshift plate, removed the original starshift stones, and replaced them with 8 second-grade starshift stones, his movements practiced and precise. With a single gesture, he activated the array. Dazzling light erupted at once, yet the plate also shuddered violently, releasing an unfamiliar and turbulent spatial ripple. Having already been forewarned, Hanli showed no surprise. After a brief pause, he placed one Big Dipper Heavenly Star Plate together with half of his remaining second-grade starshift stones onto the array, then decisively initiated the teleportation. The light surged brighter still, while the spatial fluctuations grew wildly unstable, rising and falling like raging tides. Moments later, the twin starshift plate shattered apart with a violent crack, yet before its destruction, the Big Dipper Heavenly Star Plate vanished into the light. Hanli's heart tightened at the sight. These array plates had consumed most of his wealth. Had they failed, the loss would have been unbearable. Suppressing his unease, he swiftly chanted an incantation. Profound runes lit up across the surface of the Big Dipper Heavenly Star Plate, forming a luminous blue formation amid a faint hum. Countless white motes shimmered within the array like stars scattered across the night sky. Space at its center twisted gently, and a massive sphere of black, heavy water emerged. The transfer proceeded smoothly and without obstruction. Relieved, Hanli swept his sleeve and stored the heavy water away. The array flashed repeatedly as one sphere after another appeared, and in less than an hour, all the heavy water accumulated by the earthly deity avatar over the years had been transferred. He patted the true water pouch at his waist with quiet satisfaction. The contents were now enough to fill 2 small streams, opening many future possibilities. Though costly, the array plates had resolved a long-standing obstacle, making the price well worth paying. After putting away the array plate, Hanli sat cross-legged and meditated for a full day, steadying his spirit and mind. Only then did he retrieve the mantra axis scripture and begin his cultivation in earnest. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Within the cave abode, Hanli remained motionless like a stone statue, his body shrouded in a faint golden glow. When he finally opened his eyes, joy shone upon his face. The mantra axis scripture was profound and abstruse, yet his progress had been unexpectedly smooth. Every bottleneck described in the annotation scripture was crossed with ease, as if they scarcely existed. At first, he had attributed it to luck, but as it happened again and again, doubt crept into his heart. According to the annotations, each bottleneck should delay cultivators for years, even decades or centuries, causing many to abandon the art altogether. Yet Hanli passed through them unhindered, despite possessing no exceptional aptitude or special constitution. Confusion mingled with elation, but he ultimately set the matter aside. Smooth progress was no misfortune. At this pace, manifesting a mantra treasured axis within a few years seemed possible, a feat countless others had failed to achieve after millennia. Drawing a steady breath, he continued his cultivation. 3 years slipped away like flowing water. At dawn, clouds drifted lazily over Crimson Dawn Peak as the rising sun bathed the summit in warm gold. Everything appeared unchanged, save for one detail. The fire miasma that once cloaked the entire mountain had receded significantly. It still lingered below the halfway point, but above it, the air was clear. Meng Yunggui and the others arrived at first light, meditating briefly before tending to their duties. Though only 10 in number, they maintained the vast courtyard, spirit medicine fields, and the guardian beast's cave in pristine order. While the spirit veins here were unremarkable by Bell Toll Mountain standards, the abundance of origin chi far surpassed most regions of the ancient cloud continent. Coupled with the pills Hanli had bestowed, everyone's cultivation had advanced. Meng Qianqian, in particular, had broken through twice, reaching the late foundation establishment stage, her youthful features now refined into striking beauty. "Elder Li has been in seclusion for quite some time," she remarked while tending the fields. "At his level, centuries or millennia of seclusion are nothing unusual," Meng Yunggui replied calmly. "Have you run short on resources now that core formation is within reach?" "No," she answered, a trace of irritation in her voice. Meng Yunggui's tone softened. "Never forget how fortunate we are to serve Elder Li. Though he treats us kindly, we must always remember our station." "I understand," she said, lowering her head. Satisfied, he patted her gently. "I still have some spirit stones." Before he could finish, a violent rumble shook the peak. The mountain quaked as birds and beasts fled in terror. Dark clouds rolled across the once clear sky, while origin chi surged violently toward the summit, forming a colossal vortex centered above Hanli's cave abode. Though startled, none panicked. Such phenomena were familiar to them. Still, Meng Yunggui sensed something different this time. He quickly dismissed the thought, scolding himself for idle speculation and returning to his duties. Within the secret chamber, Hanli was engulfed in blinding golden radiance, his features blurred by light. Origin chi poured in from all directions, forming a vast sea of gold that flooded the chamber, restrained only by the cave's formations. 2 hours later, the gathering slowed. The clouds dispersed, leaving clear skies once more. The sea of light trembled, then surged back into Hanli's body, vanishing in moments. A golden speck flickered at his lower abdomen, bright as the sun one instant, dim the next, devouring vast amounts of origin chi with each pulse. Behind him, a foot-wide golden wheel emerged and slowly revolved. Golden clouds formed around it as heavenly music echoed faintly. The clouds transformed into countless translucent threads, merging into two living runes that engraved themselves upon the wheel, radiating subtle law fluctuations. Hanli opened his eyes, gazing at the golden speck with unrestrained joy. After 3 years of arduous cultivation, his first immortal acupoint had opened. He had taken his first true step as a true immortal, and the radiant wheel behind him was none other than the mantra-treasured axis.